I'm going to talk a bit about designing in data insights to improve customer experience at Gatwick Train Station. And as Jennifer said, this will build a little bit on Aaron's talk before. So I don't intend to go through, so I'm just working out how to move my slides on. Right, finally done that. So yeah, I don't intend to go through all of these in detail, but as you can see, there's a number of slides to go through. So I thought it was important to look at what is the country saying about data. So we've seen the industrial strategy in 2017 launched by the previous government, and that set out some of their grand challenges, one of which was AI, AI and a data economy, of which they thought they could get around £232 billion worth of benefit from the AI and data economy. And there's been a number of other reports. So the top one there, the data generation one, is a Deloitte report, and they reckon that there's around about £15 billion worth of value to be had from data use and data sharing of various different descriptions. But what does that mean in reality to some of our customers and our clients in the infrastructure business? And we can see that Network Rail, in their final determination for control period 6, which is a 5-year period between 2020 and 2025, they're being asked by the regulator, the Office of Rail and Road, to get somewhere between 2.6 and 3.5 billion pounds worth of efficiencies. And Aaron spoke earlier about the 60 different organisational objectives, and obviously one of Network Rail's organisational objectives is to try and manage and realise this 2.6 to 3.5 billion pounds worth of efficiencies. So looking at that in the whole, what does that really mean for a project like Gatwick Station? And Gatwick Station, for those of you that don't know it, is the busiest airport station in the UK. It's relatively old, but as you can see, has had significant growth in passenger numbers. So somewhere around 12 million in 2008, 2009 to around about 21 and a quarter million passengers in 2020, 2019. And that has far outpaced any of the predictions on passenger numbers and forecasts on passenger numbers that have been in the last 5 years. And that is linked to the fact that the airport is now at 46 million passengers a year, and that again has far outpaced the growth that Gatwick was predicted to have. So the whole station needs a bit of an upgrade, and as you can see from the picture in the bottom at the middle, there is 2 existing overbridges, which are these 2 overbridges here. There's the airport side here, the concourse where the passengers come in, and the car parking area for Gatwick South Terminal over here. And we're putting in a brand new station concourse in between those 2 overbridges. And so what the new train station will therefore have a much greater capacity, will be able to carry that much bigger passenger load that's forecast over the next 30 years. But we'll also do some other things, so improve customer experience that Aaron talked about for that other organisational objective that Network Rail have. More trains will be able to arrive and depart on time, because one of the constraints of the existing train station is that the platform's very narrow, and so all of the passengers that arrive with their bags takes them a long time to get off of the platforms, and therefore new trains can't come in, and it's very difficult for the old ones to depart safely in those situations. So actually, the increased passenger numbers are actually starting to constrain the train throughput at the station because of the safety of the passengers on the excuse me, on the platforms. So actually there's a number of other organisational objectives that Network Rail are looking at, which upgrading this platform, this train station, will help to do. And so we've seen, Aaron showed this earlier, and this has come from a further piece of work that James Heaton and others at Cambridge have done recently. James is a PhD student for Costain. And so we're looking at how can we get better data collection around some of these organisational objectives at a contract or project level. And as we've talked about in a number of presentations today, how do you make it easy and beneficial for those people on the front line collecting the data so that they will do it, but also make it valuable for the organisation and the asset and the stakeholders, both during the different phases of the project, including in use, so after we've finished and have left them a beautiful new station. And so Aaron had done a piece of work where he looked at 60 or so organisational objectives, so the ones in the amber boxes in the middle. Those were broken down by the 6 headings that are at the top. And as we can see there, Aaron spoke earlier about the improved customer satisfaction element for his presentation. We're going to look particularly at the £3.5 billion worth of efficiencies that Network Rail want to capture or develop, I suppose. And how do you do that? So one way of doing that, obviously, is to put those requirements for data and the data that you need in order to generate those efficiencies or capture those efficiencies, both in this contract and in other portfolios of work that Network Rail are doing, is put them into their employees' information requirements. And then how do the contractors or their tier 1 teams like Costain, how do they respond to those in their BIM execution plan? And we can see in this slide that the centre table is their Network Rail's organisation employees' information requirements. And on the right-hand side is our BIM execution plan, so our response to those. But actually, do they really capture all of the efficiencies we could do? So if you want to break down that data capture into a bit more detail, we need to start to look at how and in what areas we might want to capture data to allow us to increase our productivity or efficiency. And if we look at those at a contract level, we can see that those six areas, 7 areas highlighted in red might be a good area to start. So if we look at new work, what are the areas of new work? So there's quite a complicated areas of logistics on this contract. There's quite an area impact for the new work on the existing station, but also on the access in and out of the station into the airport. So we're going to work with the teams, and I should have said at the start, we're at a much earlier stage with our secondment piece of work. So we're getting into the shaping and forming of the work at the moment. So I thought it would be useful to look today and talk about a particular aspect of station of our works, and we'll look particularly at the people flow element, or PED flow. Pedflow is really useful, particularly when you're doing station modelling, station forecasting for new people. So increased passenger numbers, both in terms of size of the platforms, the access and egress onto and off of those platforms on a very tight, confined site, the size of the concourse, the size of the entry into the airport or the exit. So how do all those things work, and how do we make it as future-proof and as useful, both in the 4 phases of a construction project, so design, build, handover, and bring into use, as you possibly can, whilst leaving a legacy of data for those people who are going to be using it in the future. So we've started to look at, well, how can we capture that? And if we think about it in terms of future gazing, what's the art of the possible today? And then what is actually available? What's here and now? So if we think about people flow and ped flow particularly, how it's done presently is that a person goes and stands in the station with a clicker, writes some stuff down. It might be a little more technical than that, but not a lot. And actually there is a huge amount of data contained in social media, for example, or Bluetooth via people's phones. So how can we write into an employer's information requirement to say it would be really useful if we had a system that would help us design the station, would allow us to do real-time modelling when we want to operate the station, real-time modelling when we want to take parts of the station for our phasing work when we're building the new station, but also continue that legacy so that we can get real-time data captured for growing passenger numbers throughout the life of the station when it's in use. And I think that's the real interesting bit. So capturing those requirements, because then that data that comes out of the ped flow modelling has got some real future emergent uses. So we've heard a bit about data trust today. So how can that data be used for other areas? So would the train company like to use it? Yes, probably. Would the airport like to use that ped modelling? Probably. So how can that data be used through things like data trust and be used for other emergent things?
Dan, you have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, thank you. And we've also seen things like resilience for climate change. How could that data be used for resilience? But also Network Rail also have a real desire to reduce their energy bills. So how can we work out whether it's worth running fewer trains at less busy times and then more trains at higher peak times? And that data would allow things like that, a more efficient use of the network, to probably be looked at. And so we can see that talk about digital twins. We can see that organisational objective of lower carbon. Network Rail also want to reduce accidents, and one of the big areas of accidents on stations is crowding or people rushing down the escalators. And so this allows us to really do those what-if scenario planning. So that's where we are, and what we've got to do next. So we're working with the Gatwick team, and we're doing those plain language questions in workshops to look at what are the data feeds that would allow us to be much more efficient and increase productivity in the design, the build, the handover, and in-use areas. And then what are the data means of capturing that data that would allow us to capture it and use it across all 4 of those areas. So that's where we are, and I'd be happy to take some questions now.